Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to take a really comprehensive tour of the modern digital battlefield. You know, we live in a world where data is arguably our absolutely most valuable resource. And the harsh reality is, there's an entire shadow industry out there completely dedicated to compromising it. But today, we're not just going to sit here and focus on the doom and gloom. We're going to break down exactly how these threats actually operate, why they're happening, and crucially, how organizations can step up and defend themselves.
So, here's our roadmap for the Explainer. We'll start with Section 1, Defining the Cyber Threat. Then, 2, The Attacker's Arsenal. 3, Motives and Business Impact. And finally, 4, Defense and Future Threats.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Defining the Cyber Threat. What exactly are cyber attacks?
At its absolute core, a cyber attack is the process of attempting to steal data or gain unauthorized access to computers and networks. And honestly, most of the time, this unauthorized access is really just step one before a full-blown data breach. The ultimate goal for the attacker is typically either to disable a target computer entirely and take it offline, or to infiltrate connected systems. To really put this into perspective, think about the shipping giant CMA-CGM back in September 2020. Malicious actors targeted their peripheral servers with malware, and it wasn't just some quiet behind-the-scenes data theft. It forced one of the largest container shipping companies in the entire world to take their online services completely offline just to contain the threat. We're talking massive, real-world consequences for digital vulnerabilities.
Now, what's really fascinating about this slide is how incredibly fast these tactics have evolved over the years. If we look back to that 2009 to 2012 era, the focus was mostly on advanced persistent threats, or APTs. These are really stealthy, long-term data theft campaigns, like Operation Aurora. Then, right between 2013 and 2016, we saw the absolute explosion of widespread ransomware. Think of the WannaCry attack in 2017. That thing hit hospitals and businesses across more than 150 countries, spread like wildfire. Moving into 2017 to 2020, attackers started hijacking smart devices with the Mirai botnet, literally taking down major internet services just by exploiting weak passwords on everyday IoT devices. By 2021 and 2022, they moved way up the ladder to target supply chains, like that massive SolarWinds breach, and RAS, or Ransomware as a Service, where developers literally just rent out their malware to other criminals. And today, well, we're facing AI-driven deepfakes and synthetic identity fraud. The threat isn't just growing in numbers, it is getting exponentially smarter.
Moving right along to Section 2, the attacker's arsenal. What exactly are their weapons of choice?
As you can see, attackers rely on a pretty diverse toolkit. It ranges from simple, almost psychological trickery, all the way to highly technical infrastructure exploitation. From your standard malware and phishing to zero-day exploits and DNS tunneling, these guys have a very specific tool for every single type of vulnerability. Let's zoom in on a few of the most critical ones that organizations are fighting off on a daily basis.
So the two you probably hear about the most frequently are phishing and malware. Now, they often work together, but they are fundamentally different beasts. Phishing is basically a psychological attack. It uses spoofed emails to trick a target. Just imagine an employee getting this totally urgent-looking email that looks exactly like it's from their bank, clicking a link and typing in their password. Boom. They literally just handed the keys over to the attacker. Malware, on the flip side, is malicious software. Picture that same employee visiting a sketchy website that silently downloads a Trojan virus in the background. That malware can cause immediate damage or worse, quietly create a backdoor for a much, much larger attack down the line.
And you know, that larger attack is very often ransomware. Ransomware is a financially fueled malware attack that encrypts a victim's data, or just locks down entire computers, and demands a ransom fee to restore access. What's absolutely staggering here is the collateral damage. In 2018 alone, ransomware caused about $8 billion in damages globally. But here's the real kicker. Only $1 billion of that was from actual ransom payments. The other $7 billion? That came from reputational damage, lost revenue, and massive operational downtime. Seriously, the disruption itself is often way more costly than the ransom.
Okay, let's look at how attackers actively overwhelm or intercept systems. First up, we have denial of service, or DDoS attacks. This is just pure brute force. It's flooding a website with so much massive traffic that the entire system just gets overwhelmed and crashes. Then there's the man-in-the-middle attack. Imagine you're sitting at a coffee shop, you connect to the free Wi-Fi, but that network is actually controlled by a hacker sitting in the corner. They're positioning themselves right between you and the internet, quietly intercepting all your data and login credentials. Finally, SQL injections. If a website's coding has a vulnerability, attackers can inject malicious database commands, known as SQL, to completely seize control of the backend database. This lets them steal user data or even alter and delete financial records.
Now let's contrast those loud, highly disruptive attacks with incredibly stealthy methods. Cryptojacking, for instance, is practically invisible. An attacker infects a device solely to secretly siphon its computing power to mine cryptocurrency. Honestly, the only symptom might be that your laptop fan is running a little hot. Zero-day exploits, though. Those are perhaps the most feared. Hackers find a flaw in a software's code that even the software creator doesn't know about yet. Because there's literally 0 days notice, there's no patch available, allowing attackers to just roam freely. Lastly, DNS tunneling. This exploits the domain name system, which is basically the internet's trusted address book. Because DNS traffic is rarely monitored for data transfers, hackers use it as a hidden tunnel to quietly extract sensitive information right past a company's firewalls.
So that brings us to Section 3, Motives and Business Impact. Why do they actually do this?
Well, attackers certainly aren't a monolith. Their motivations are highly diverse. Right at the top, unsurprisingly, is pure financial gain. But there's also business intelligence. Think highly targeted attacks, sometimes called whaling, aimed straight at C-suite executives to steal valuable corporate secrets. Then we've got state-sponsored cyber warfare. Do you remember that 2016 blackout in Ukraine? That was a nation-state attack literally taking down a physical power grid. We also see hacktivism, where groups like Anonymous attack systems to raise political awareness, and it scales all the way down to disgruntled former employees seeking revenge, or even thrill-seekers and white-hat hackers who just want the intellectual challenge of breaking in.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this number, $3.86 million. According to a joint report by the Ponemon Institute and IBM, that is the staggering average cost of a single data breach. While the motives definitely vary, the financial devastation to the victim is pretty universal. The return on investment for criminals is astronomical because, frankly, these attacks are incredibly cheap to launch but incredibly lucrative when they succeed.
But you might be wondering, why are they succeeding so often? Why is access so easy for hackers? Well, a lot of the time it just comes down to basic human error and really poor IT hygiene. A Varonis data risk report highlighted a frankly alarming reality. 38% of users have passwords that never expire. Never. Even worse, 50% of business user accounts are completely inactive or stale. We're talking about accounts belonging to former employees or forgotten systems. That is essentially leaving dozens of unlocked, unmonitored doors wide open all around the perimeter of a company's network.
And when an attacker inevitably walks through one of those unlocked doors, the fallout goes way beyond just the IT department. The business impact hits in 3 massive waves. First up, you have the immediate financial losses and severe operational disruptions. Systems crash, factories stop, shipping completely halts. Second is the long-tail reputational damage. If a company loses sensitive customer data, repairing that broken trust can take years, if it ever happens at all. And finally, the legal liabilities. Organizations face massive regulatory fines and class action lawsuits for failing to protect the very data they were trusted with.
Okay, let's shift gears to our final section, Section 4, Defense and Future Threats. Time to build a fortress.
And this brilliantly illustrates how organizations simply have to shift from reactive to proactive defense. You just can't wait for the alarm to go off anymore. Organizations absolutely must implement threat intelligence platforms so they can see threats before they even arrive. They need rigorous scanning and continuous monitoring of endpoint devices, like employee laptops and phones, for literally any unusual behavior. They have to conduct proactive threat hunting, actively searching their own networks for those hidden, long-term, advanced persistent threats. And ultimately, it requires adopting a zero-trust security model. Zero trust means exactly what it sounds like. Trust no one, verify everyone and every single device every single time they request access to data.
But look, prevention is never 100% foolproof. You also need a solid mitigation playbook for when an attacker inevitably slips through the cracks. Organizations must build and practice rigid incident response plans so they can contain a breach in minutes, not months. They need real-time network monitoring. Crucially, they have to train their employees. Remember phishing? Your employees are your absolute first line of defense. If they can recognize a fake email, they stop the attack dead in its tracks. And finally, regular, isolated data backups. If ransomware locks your current systems, having clean backups means you can just wipe the slate clean and restore operations without paying a single dime to criminals.
Defending today is definitely hard, but we also have to look ahead at tomorrow's threats. The landscape is actively being reshaped by 2 massive trends. First, AI-driven attacks. Just as security teams are using AI to defend networks, hackers are leveraging AI right back to automate and launch highly targeted, continuous threats at a scale we have never seen before. Second, attackers are fiercely targeting the cloud and supply chains. I mean, why hack a highly secure enterprise when you can just hack their much less secure third-party vendor? This is such a critical vulnerability that Gartner predicts 60% of supply chain organizations will view cybersecurity as a primary risk factor during third-party transactions by 2025.
To really put the speed of this evolution into perspective, Cybersecurity Ventures released a staggering prediction. By the year 2031, a ransomware attack will hit a business or consumer somewhere in the world every 2 seconds. Just let that sink in for a moment. That translates to 43,200 ransomware attacks happening every single day. The sheer volume and velocity of these threats are expanding exponentially.
Which leaves us with this final, really critical question to think about. Is your organization prepared for the next exploit? As we've explored throughout this explainer, the